Comment on the video, where are people watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. In the very first moments of the narrative, the tone is set with a mixture of humor, intrigue, and an unexpected twist on suburban life. The narrator introduces his wife, Bernice, in a manner that is both light-hearted and immediately attention-grabbing. By describing Bernice as a Delta Force operative, the narrator not only establishes a stark contrast between her appearance as a normal suburban resident and her secret, elite military prowess, but he also sets up the anticipation for the extraordinary events that will follow. The introduction is intentionally playful. The narrator's humorous tone indicates that, while the setting is a quiet, orderly suburban neighborhood, there is an underlying absurdity waiting to be uncovered. Bernice's portrayal as a Delta Force operative, an elite, highly trained member of an unconventional branch of the military, infuses the everyday with a sense of unpredictability. This twist serves a dual purpose: it creates immediate curiosity about Bernice's hidden capabilities, and it implies that even in the most mundanely planned neighborhoods, there can lurk an element of excitement and surprise. Moreover, Bernice's role as both a loving partner and a covert operative challenges common assumptions about suburban life. Typically, suburban narratives emphasize routine, stability, and the pursuit of the American dream through quiet, unremarkable means. Yet here, the narrator subverts these expectations by hinting that behind the facade of a peaceful community exists a layer of complexity and danger. This revelation about Bernice's true nature not only piques the audience's interest but also promises that her actions, especially during something as innocent as a morning jog, will have unexpected and far-reaching consequences. The setting, introduced as a typical suburban neighborhood, further accentuates the contrast between appearance and reality. The peaceful, neatly maintained streets and the mundane activities of daily life serve as the ideal backdrop against which Bernice's covert prowess is showcased. As she embarks on her jog, the narrator hints at the duality of her existence. She is simultaneously part of this predictable environment and a force capable of extraordinary feats. The humor with which the narrator introduces this conflict suggests that the ensuing story will blend everyday observations with larger-than-life surprises, creating a narrative that is both relatable and entertaining. In addition, the choice of the word jog in the description of Bernice's morning activity subtly reinforces the narrative tension. On the surface, jogging is a common, benign activity associated with health and routine. However, when juxtaposed with her identity as a Delta Force operative, it takes on a layer of irony and anticipation. The audience is left to wonder, what is the significance of her jogging in such an environment? Is it merely for exercise, or is it part of a larger, more secretive mission? In Sunny Meadows Estates, tranquility and order are the watchwords of everyday life. The narrator describes their neighborhood as a meticulously planned suburban paradise, a community predominantly occupied by retired residents who prize routine and quiet reflection. Against this backdrop of serene streets lined with manicured lawns and decorative hedges, the narrator paints an idyllic picture of life where every detail is carefully curated to project an image of perfection. At the heart of this peaceful enclave, the narrator's wife, Bernice, stands out with her remarkable energy and unorthodox approach to life. Despite the calm atmosphere that defines Sunny Meadows Estates, Bernice decides one bright morning that they both need a bit of exercise. Clad in her practical yet stylish athletic wear, and with a natural flair that hints at her true, covert identity, she sets out for a jog. The narrator explains how Bernice's decision to get moving not only contributes to her well-being but also injects a refreshing dose of spontaneity into the otherwise staid community. As Bernice leaves the house, the narrator takes a moment to reflect on the beauty of their surroundings. He admires the well-kept gardens, the orderly streets, and the sense of communal harmony that pervades the estate. Yet, despite the apparent perfection, he hints that there's more to life here than meets the eye. It is a community governed by strict rules and monitored by an ever-vigilant HOA, a fact that, as the day unfolds, will prove to be a source of underlying tension. The narrator's tone is at once both affectionate and wry, capturing the charm and predictability of suburban life while subtly foreshadowing that not everything in Sunny Meadows is as flawless as it seems. In a neighborhood where everyone follows a predetermined script, Bernice's everyday jog promises an unexpected twist, a hint that even the most perfectly planned communities can be rife with surprises. In this setting, the narrator establishes the dichotomy between serene, orderly existence and the potential for disruptive events. The peaceful environment of Sunny Meadows Estates, characterized by its reliable rhythms and uniform appearances, serves as a stage upon which the extraordinary, embodied by Bernice's hidden abilities, will soon play out. The careful detailing of the neighborhood's beauty and predictability not only immerses the reader in its visual splendor but also sets the foundation for the conflict that will emerge later on. Shortly after Bernice embarks on her jog, the seemingly idyllic calm of Sunny Meadows Estates is shattered by an unsettling sight. As she runs past the HOA clubhouse, the narrator notices that two vigilant HOA members, Barty and Gladys, have suddenly appeared along the path, surrounding Bernice. Their presence is far from coincidental. Barty and Gladys are intent on enforcing the strict regulations of the HOA, and they are zeroed in on Bernice's exercise routine. The narrator describes his mounting concern as he watches them converge on his wife with a hard, unyielding focus. Their approach is methodical and intimidating, as if Bernice's jog itself is a serious infraction of the community's unwritten code. In the meticulous world of Sunny Meadows, where every action is scrutinized by the HOA, Bernice's simple act of exercising seems to have become a potential violation. Barty and Gladys have taken it upon themselves to question her right to jog freely, their voices echoing across the neatly trimmed lawns. The tension in the air is palpable as the narrator recounts the moment with a mix of disbelief and concern. He notes that the HOA's obsession with upholding small, often arbitrary rules has created an environment where even the most benign behaviors are subject to harsh oversight. For Bernice, known not only for her athletic prowess but also for the secret that lies beneath her serene exterior, the confrontation is unexpected. Yet, as the narrator watches the scene unfold, he realizes that this is but the first sign of an emerging conflict that threatens to disrupt the quiet order of their community. With each passing second, the situation grows more uncomfortable. The HOA members' posture, their unwavering gaze, and the sternness in their tone suggest that they are ready to enforce the rules, no matter how trivial the infraction may seem to an outsider. The narrator reflects on how this encounter is emblematic of the broader issues within the community, a place where conformity is prized above all else and where deviation from the norm, no matter how harmless, is harshly punished. Even as Barty and Gladys begin to circle closer around Bernice, the narrator's worry deepens. He is acutely aware that their actions might escalate into something far more serious than a routine inspection of community rules. The narrator's internal monologue reveals his disquiet at the prospect of such invasive enforcement tactics intruding into their private lives, reinforcing a growing belief that something must change in the way the HOA conducts itself. As Bernice continues her jog through Sunny Meadows Estates, the already tense situation takes a sudden, dramatic turn. The narrator describes how Barty, one of the relentless HOA enforcers, escalates the encounter by producing an unexpected prop, a paintball gun. With an air of militant authority, Barty accuses Bernice of violating community rules simply by jogging without prior authorization. His voice rings out sharply, as if the simple act of running were akin to inciting rebellion in their carefully regimented neighborhood. The narrator watches, heart pounding, as Barty brandishes the paintball gun. This startling move transforms what might have been a routine inspection into a full-blown confrontation. The absurdity of the situation is undeniable. In a community renowned for its strict enforcement of every minutiae of behavior, Barty's actions seem to take enforcement to an extreme level, where even exercise becomes a punishable offense. Yet, it is precisely this extreme reaction that underscores the extent to which the HOA's authority has been militarized, an authority that now appears both overzealous and dangerously disconnected from reality. As the confrontation unfolds, tension builds rapidly. The narrator details how Barty, with the paintball gun raised as if ready to enforce the law with non-lethal force, positions himself squarely in Bernice's path. The atmosphere is charged with the threat of violence, not of physical harm to Bernice, but of an overwhelming display of power intended to intimidate any dissent. Gladys, Barty's partner in enforcement, stands silently by with a steely expression, further intensifying the moment. The narrative shifts to the internal perspective of the narrator, who feels a mix of fear, disbelief, and a grim sense of inevitability. He is all too aware that this escalation is not an isolated aberration but a manifestation of the HOA's authoritarian approach. In his mind, every detail of the encounter, Barty's aggressive stance, the absurdity of wielding a paintball gun as a threat, and Gladys's unwavering silence, serves as a stark reminder that the values of common sense and personal freedom are being trampled by an overbearing system. Meanwhile, Bernice, whose exterior belies her exceptional capabilities, remains unfazed. Even as Barty's threats become louder and more pointed, she maintains an aura of calm determination. The narrator describes how she uses her extraordinary skills, honed during her secret training, to prepare for the coming storm. He hints at the possibility that her well-hidden abilities might soon turn the tables on this ludicrous confrontation, a silent promise that the day's events will not end in the submission of an unwilling victim. At this pivotal moment, the tension in Sunny Meadows Estates reaches its zenith. The narrator's descriptions become more vivid, capturing every detail from the menacing glint in Barty's eyes to the subtle, confident shift in Bernice's posture. This transition marks a turning point. What began as an absurd enforcement of trivial community rules has now metamorphosed into an emblematic struggle between oppressive authority and individual autonomy. As the confrontation intensifies, the narrator senses that the situation is on the brink of spiraling out of control. The outburst from Barty, amplified by the display of the paintball gun, is not merely about enforcing a rule, it is an assertion of dominance, a crude reminder that the HOA's power extends into every facet of community life. Yet, within this maelstrom of tension, Bernice's calm hints at something far more formidable, the ability to counteract this tyranny with decisive, controlled action. In the mind of the narrator, the stakes have now transcended mere jogging. The clash in front of the HOA clubhouse becomes symbolic of a broader battle, a fight for the right to live freely without arbitrary and overreaching interference from those who wield power without wisdom. Every second that ticks by in this heated encounter etches itself into the narrator's memory as a testament to the absurdity of enforced conformity and the resilience of the human spirit. By the time the confrontation is at its peak, the tension is palpable and the future uncertain. The narrator is left to wonder how Bernice, an unassuming jogger with a secret identity, will harness her latent skills to restore balance, setting the stage for a dramatic reversal of power in their otherwise orderly suburban world. Just as the tension in the neighborhood seems destined to erupt into chaos, Bernice Muhammad, whose concealed prowess has been hinted at throughout the day, steps forward to challenge the escalating threat. In a move that transforms the narrative, Bernice confronts the aggressive stance of Barty and the silent complicit demeanor of Gladys with an admirable display of martial arts skill and remarkable composure. As Barty's paintball gun glints in the early morning light and his voice rises in fury, Bernice responds with a measured calm that belies the danger of the moment. The narrator watches in a mixture of awe and relief as his wife approaches the scene. With precise, fluid movements that seem almost choreographed, Bernice neutralizes Barty's threatening posture. In a swift, elegant motion, she disarms him, rendering his paintball gun useless as it clatters harmlessly to the pavement. The sudden shift in momentum leaves Barty momentarily stunned, his aggressive facade faltering in the face of Bernice's unexpected prowess. Not stopping there, Bernice quickly turns her attention to Gladys, who is revealed to have a concealed taser hidden within her hair. A bizarre detail that underscores the surreal nature of the confrontation. With equal speed and confidence, Bernice disarms Gladys as well, her movements fluid and assured as she expertly renders both would-be enforcers powerless. The efficiency of her actions is a clear demonstration of her rigorous training, each step, each technique is executed with precision. The narrator's heart swells with pride as he quietly acknowledges that the true strength of his wife lies not only in her physical skill but also in her unflappable resolve under pressure. Throughout the confrontation, Bernice's demeanor remains steady. Rather than escalating the conflict further, she appears to approach the situation with the calm assurance of someone who has been through far more critical battles. Her measured responses contrast sharply with the overzealous aggression of Barty and Gladys, whose earlier posturing now seems out of place and ineffectual. For the residents of Sunny Meadows Estates who have been silently observing, this moment is nothing short of a revelation. The imposing facade of the HOA enforcers is definitively shattered by a single, decisive act. The narrator describes the scene with a blend of admiration and incredulity. He notes that while Barty and Gladys had intended to impose a trivial regulation, Bernice's swift and decisive actions upended their attempt to intimidate an ordinary jogger. In doing so, Bernice not only defended her right to exercise freely but also challenged the very notion that the HOA, and its enforcers, held unquestionable authority over the community. In the aftermath, the subdued figures of Barty and Gladys stand in stark contrast to Bernice's commanding presence. The air in the neighborhood shifts palpably, infused with a renewed sense of hope and the promise of change. Bernice's actions have sent a powerful message. Authority backed by outdated rules and aggressive tactics is no match for genuine skill, determination, and the courage to stand up for one's rights. As the confrontation winds down, Bernice calmly suggests that they all return home. Her words, delivered in the quiet aftermath of the violence, have a subtle yet resonant impact, transforming the hostile encounter into an event that will be remembered for its dignity and the rediscovery of personal power. The narrator, still watching from a safe distance, feels a profound sense of relief and pride. He realizes that his wife's actions have not only neutralized the immediate threat but have also set the stage for a larger shift in how the community will view its own rights and the limits of HOA enforcement. In that decisive moment, Bernice's unyielding response signifies the turning point in the day's events. A clear declaration that, even in a world governed by rigid rules and overbearing authority, true strength lies in the ability to remain calm, to act decisively, and to inspire change without resorting to needless violence. Following the dramatic confrontation with the overzealous HOA enforcers, the events that unfolded captured the attention of the entire neighborhood, transforming a private incident into a public spectacle. As Bernice calmly regained her composure after disarming Barty and Gladys, the narrator observed the spectacle with a mix of admiration and amusement. What began as a routine jog had now erupted into a breathtaking display of martial prowess that would leave an indelible mark on the community. In the moments that followed the disarmament, Bernice transitioned effortlessly from defensive maneuvers to an impromptu exhibition of her skills. With an unexpected burst of fluid motion, she executed a series of impressive flips and martial arts moves. Each move was executed with precision and grace, contrasting starkly with the clumsy aggression of Barty and Gladys. The way Bernice moved, swift, controlled, and utterly confident, captivated onlookers and transformed an otherwise tense scenario into an almost theatrical performance. Residents began to gather at a safe distance, drawn by the commotion and the sight of their neighbor, a seemingly ordinary woman revealing a hidden depth of discipline and power. The narrator's initial shock was now replaced by a sense of pride, as he realized that his wife was not only defending herself but was also inadvertently challenging the long-standing culture of intimidation that had long plagued their neighborhood. Her move served as both a personal victory and a symbolic rejection of authoritarian control. Social media exploded almost instantly with footage captured by quick-thinking bystanders. Short clips of Bernice's feats were shared across various platforms, and within hours, the video went viral. Memes began to circulate, humorously juxtaposing Bernice's martial arts display against the rigid enforcement tactics of the HOA enforcers. The sight of Barty's startled expression, coupled with the incongruity of a paintball gun clattering to the ground and Gladys's shocked gaze as she fumbled with her taser, spread like wildfire, rendering the whole confrontation a source of community-wide amusement and admiration. As the footage continued to circulate, opinions began to shift. What some had initially seen as a mere overreaction by strict enforcers was now being recognized as a microcosm of a broader issue, the overreach of outdated HOA rules in an era that celebrated individuality and innovation. Bernice's performance not only disarmed the immediate threat but also symbolized a powerful stand against authoritarianism in a community that prided itself on order and routine. In the aftermath, as calm slowly returned to Sunny Meadows Estates, residents recounted the events with a mixture of wonder and lighthearted relief. Neighbors who had long tolerated the invasive oversight of the HOA now found themselves empowered by the sight of Bernice's fearless display. Whispers and excited discussions filled the air. Plans were even being made for informal self-defense classes, as some residents joked that if Bernice could be so effortlessly formidable, perhaps they too could learn a thing or two. For the narrator, the spectacle was deeply transformative. He felt a renewed sense of hope that the community, which had once been characterized by its rigid and unyielding enforcement, could evolve into a space where personal freedoms were respected and celebrated. Bernice's public display of skills was not merely a reaction to aggression, it was a beacon of possibility, a sign that change was not only possible, but could be achieved through courage and grace. In that charged atmosphere, the legacy of the confrontation began to take shape. Bernice's actions had redrawn the boundaries of acceptable behavior in Sunny Meadows Estates. The once feared persona of the HOA enforcers now appeared petty in comparison to the quiet but undeniable power of a woman who had revealed her true, extraordinary capabilities. It was a public declaration that the community would no longer be cowed by arbitrary rules and that every resident, no matter how unassuming, possessed the strength to stand up for their rights. After the dust settled on the confrontation, Bernice's calm suggestion to return home resonated throughout Sunny Meadows Estates as a turning point for the community. In the immediate aftermath, the extraordinary events left the neighborhood in a state of awe and cautious fear. As the exhausted HOA enforcers withdrew, the residents were left grappling with the implications of what they had just witnessed. An otherwise routine jog had transformed into a bold act of defiance against oppressive regulations. Immediately following the incident, word spread like wildfire. Neighbors shared their accounts, and unofficial gatherings sprang up in the park and at local coffee shops. People spoke in hushed, excited tones about Bernice's incredible display of martial arts. Her ability to disarm two aggressors with swift, precise moves had become the talk of the community. For many, it was a revelation. The familiar, repressive presence of the HOA was being challenged in a manner that was as unexpected as it was inspiring. At a hastily arranged HOA meeting that evening, tensions ran high. The board, still attempting to salvage its control over the neighborhood, tried to downplay the incident as a minor disturbance. However, the public was not swayed. Residents voiced their support for Bernice and the narrator, demanding accountability from the HOA enforcers and questioning the legitimacy of their strict regulations. The once unchallenged authority of the HOA now faced a rising tide of resistance fueled by a shared desire for fairness and self-determination. During the meeting, the narrator spoke eloquently about the need for balance, between upholding community standards and respecting personal freedoms. He argued that the incident was not an isolated event, but a symptom of a larger problem, an inflexible system that punishes innovation and individuality. His words, delivered with genuine emotion, struck a chord with many attendees, who began to share similar grievances about trivial fines and intrusive inspections. The collective mood shifted from one of resignation to that of active defiance. Pressure mounted on the HOA board, and it became clear that drastic measures were required. With growing public support, the board reluctantly agreed to review its enforcement policies. A vote was taken that very night to scale back the overly stringent rules, and to implement procedures that allowed for more flexibility and community input. The outcome was a symbolic win for the narrator and Bernice, and for the entire neighborhood, as it signified the beginning of a transformation in how authority was exercised. In the days that followed, residents continued to discuss the incident long after the meeting ended. The example set by Bernice had become a rallying point, a reminder that every member of the community had the right to challenge unjust power. Informal self-defense classes began to circulate among neighbors, and public debates about the role of the HOA replaced the usual subdued conversations. Bernice's performance had not only disrupted a single enforcement action but had also sparked a broader dialogue about respect, freedom, and the need for accountability in local governance. For the narrator, the resolution was bittersweet. While he celebrated the initial successes in curbing the excesses of the HOA, he remained acutely aware that the struggle for balanced, equitable community oversight was far from over. The incident had fundamentally shifted perceptions in Sunny Meadows Estates, paving the way for a more democratic approach to neighborhood management, one where the voices of residents, rather than the rigid dictates of a few, would rule. The legacy of this confrontation, therefore, reached well beyond the immediate altercation. It became a catalyst for change, a symbol that even in a seemingly tranquil suburb, bold actions could lead to radical improvements in community life. Bernice's brave response had, in effect, redefined the boundaries of acceptable enforcement in the neighborhood and inspired a collective stand against authoritarian practices. In the wake of the public outcry following the dramatic altercation, Sunny Meadows Estates began to see tangible changes in how the community was managed. As residents rallied in support of the narrator and Bernice, a new sense of empowerment swept through the neighborhood. The once oppressive HOA was forced to reevaluate its outdated practices, and community leaders introduced a new bylaw that allowed jogging, albeit with modest restrictions to ensure minimal disruption. During the subsequent HOA meeting, where tensions had reached their peak, the board reluctantly approved reforms aimed at balancing regulation with personal freedoms. The new rule acknowledged that while community standards were important, they should not stifle personal health and well-being. The bylaw clearly outlined acceptable jogging hours and routes, ensuring that residents could exercise without fear of punitive actions from the HOA enforcers. For many residents, this change was a breath of fresh air. The new regulations were seen as a move toward a more inclusive and responsive community. Neighbors, who had long felt intimidated by the heavy-handed methods of enforcement, began to share their relief and hope for the future. Informal gatherings sprang up in the neighborhood, where discussions focused on how the revised rules could foster both safety and freedom. Even Barty and Gladys, the once ferocious enforcers, were relegated to taking a temporary leave of absence as the community restructured. Their absence symbolized a break from the past, a clear sign that the era of draconian oversight was coming to an end. With the new bylaw in effect, the tone of Sunny Meadows Estates gradually shifted from one of strict regulation to one of mutual respect and collaboration. For the narrator and Bernice, these community changes validated their struggle. The revised rules not only allowed for the continuation of normal activities, such as Bernice's jogging, but also set a precedent for how future disputes would be resolved. There was a renewed focus on dialogue and transparency, with the HOA board promising to engage more openly with residents. This progressive approach meant that any enforcement action would now be preceded by community consultations, ensuring that personal freedoms would always be balanced against the collective good. Amid these positive changes, community events began to take on new significance. Outdoor gatherings, previously stifled by fear of punitive fines, now blossomed into lively celebrations of neighborhood unity. The narrator observed that even the aesthetic of the community seemed to improve, with residents proudly displaying their personal touches and innovative ideas. The collective mood was one of optimism, as the shared experience of challenging and overbearing authority brought a sense of unity and purpose. Ultimately, the community changes in Sunny Meadows Estates marked the beginning of a new era. The hard-won reforms were not simply procedural adjustments, they represented a fundamental shift in the way the residents interacted with each other and with local governance. With the oppressive legacy of the former HOA practices fading into memory, the neighborhood embraced a future defined by fairness, creativity, and genuine collaboration. In the months following the dramatic events that rocked Sunny Meadows Estates, Bernice's reputation underwent a remarkable transformation. Once viewed merely as the wife of the narrator, she quickly ascended to the status of local legend. Her extraordinary response during the confrontation, a dazzling display of martial arts prowess that left HOA enforcers Barty and Gladys stupefied, became the talk of the neighborhood and a potent symbol of defiance against arbitrary authority. News of Bernice's fearless actions spread rapidly through community channels. Social media posts, neighborhood forums, and local gossip buzzed with excitement and admiration. Videos capturing the swift, decisive moments when she disarmed her attackers circulated widely, inspiring both awe and a touch of humorous disbelief. In an environment that had long been constrained by rigid regulations, Bernice's actions stood out as a beacon of unexpected power and resilience. The impact of her exploits went beyond mere local celebrity. Her demonstration of strength and self-control spurred a movement within the community. Several residents, motivated by her example, enrolled in self-defense classes. These sessions became a practical way for people to empower themselves and ensure that no one in Sunny Meadows Estates would feel vulnerable to the heavy-handed enforcement of outdated rules. For many, Bernice became the personification of the possibility of change, a rallying figure whose actions had shattered preconceived notions of what a suburban woman could achieve. Even Barty, one of the aggressive HOA enforcers, began to reconsider his career choices amid the fallout. Rumors circulated that he was contemplating a new path, a testament to how deeply Bernice's impact had resonated, even among those who had once served as agents of the oppressive system. In time, Bernice's image was immortalized in the collective memory of the community, and residents started referring to her exploits with affectionate nicknames and humorous anecdotes. The legend of Bernice eventually reached a point where her story was woven into the local culture of Sunny Meadows Estates. Wall murals, community bulletin boards, and even annual events began to reference her in admiring tones. Her actions symbolized not just personal valor but the triumph of individual empowerment over rigid bureaucracy. For many, she became a living reminder that one person's courage can alter the fabric of a community, inspiring others to stand up for their rights and to confront injustice head-on. The narrator, proud yet humble, often reflected on the profound transformation that Bernice's legacy had sparked. He noted that what started as a simple morning jog had evolved into a powerful narrative of defiance, resilience, and community spirit, a narrative that would continue to inspire future generations in Sunny Meadows Estates. Ultimately, the legend of Bernice wasn't just about physical prowess or a moment of defiant action. It was about the reclamation of autonomy and the assertion that everyone, no matter how unassuming, has the power to challenge the status quo. Her story had become a cherished, enduring part of the neighborhood's identity. As the saga of unconventional enforcement and community uprising drew to a close, the atmosphere in Sunny Meadows Estates entered a phase of reflection and renewal. The dramatic events that had once transformed everyday routines into moments of high tension now receded into legend, leaving behind a legacy that promised a brighter future for all residents. In the aftermath of the restructuring of the HOA, the narrator reflects on the tumultuous journey that began with an absurd confrontation and culminated in sweeping changes. Under the leadership of the newly elected HOA board, steered by principles of fairness, transparency, and community empowerment, the neighborhood slowly shed the heavy hand of outdated regulations. One of the most celebrated symbols of this transformation was none other than Bernice herself. Now hailed as a local heroine, she became an icon of strength, inspiring not only admiration but also active participation in community governance. Bernice embraced her newfound reputation with humility and determination. In a gesture that would symbolize the turning of a new page, she began teaching self-defense classes at the community center. These classes provided residents with practical skills while reinforcing the notion that personal empowerment was central to the renewed spirit of Sunny Meadows Estates. Bernice's self-defense sessions quickly evolved into popular community events, attended by both young and old, fostering a sense of unity and mutual support. The changes extended far beyond self-defense. New policies embraced sustainable practices, and public spaces once dominated by strict, arbitrary rules were now vibrant hubs for social interaction. Community events were organized with genuine participation in mind, and even the architecture of the neighborhood saw subtle improvements that prioritized resident comfort over bureaucratic decorum. The echoes of the past, of fines, intrusive inspections, and oppressive oversight, were slowly replaced by an atmosphere of cooperation and respect. The narrator finds solace in the peaceful new order. As he watches Bernice, with a playful smile, prepare for her next self-defense class at the community center, he reflects on the remarkable turnaround. The incident that once threatened to tear their world apart had given rise to a more inclusive and dynamic community, one where every voice mattered and every resident felt valued. Even the stiff enforcement tactics of the old HOA are now relegated to mere anecdotes, a testament to the transformative power of standing up to tyranny. In a final, light-hearted moment of introspection, the narrator muses on the irony of the situation. How a day that began with absurd legal threats and escalated into physical confrontation ultimately led to a renaissance of suburban life. With a heart full of hope and a mind at ease, he concludes that life in Sunny Meadows Estates will never again be dull. The legacy of their struggle is now a foundation for future progress, where innovation, communal respect, and personal freedom coexist in harmony. Thus, the story ends on a note of renewal, a new beginning where Bernice, the once unexpected warrior, continues to inspire change, and the community, now united and stronger than ever, looks forward to a future where every challenge is met with courage and resilience.